Okay, let's jump right in. Have you ever thought about this? That an ancient architectural plan for a building that was never even constructed could hold a massive secret that's actually relevant to our lives today? Well, we're about to go on a journey with the prophet Ezekiel to unlock exactly that.
And this is the central puzzle, isn't it? I mean, think about it. Why would God give these incredibly detailed instructions, down to the last measurement, for a temple that was never going to exist in stone and mortar? It's a huge mystery, and believe me, the answer is more amazing than you might think.
But before we can even get to the new blueprint, we've got to go back. We need to understand why a new one was even necessary. And that means taking a look at the heartbreaking story of why God's presence left the first temple. So, imagine you're seeing exactly what Ezekiel saw in his vision. It was a scene of total betrayal happening in what was supposed to be the holiest place on the entire planet. And the specifics, wow, they are shocking. You had the elders, the spiritual leaders of the nation, secretly worshiping idols of animals. And at the same time, right out in the open, women were at the temple gate weeping for a foreign god. This wasn't some hidden problem. The rot started at the very top and had infected everyone. And God's reaction wasn't just a sudden burst of anger. No, what Ezekiel saw was this slow, almost agonizing departure. The divine glory first lifts up from the most holy place. It pauses at the doorway, then it moves to the outer gate and pauses again, almost as if taking one last sad look back. And only then does it finally leave. It was a reluctant, grief-filled goodbye. And that right there tells you everything. Once God's presence was gone, it didn't matter how beautiful the building was. It was just an empty shell. It's like a body without a soul. It might look impressive, but the life, its whole purpose, was gone. But the story doesn't end there, not at all. For these people who were living as exiles, who had lost everything, God gave them a new vision, a blueprint filled with hope, showing them exactly how His glory planned to return. And just how grand was this new plan? Well, get this. The outer courtyard alone was over 60,000 square meters. Now, that's a huge number, but what does that even look like? Okay, to put that into perspective for you, that's almost 10 football fields, just for the courtyard. This was God's way of showing them that the restoration He was planning was going to be bigger and more glorious than anything they could have imagined. But it wasn't just about size. The design itself was teaching something. You couldn't just wander in. You had to climb 7 steps to get to the outer court, then another 8 to the inner court, and then even higher to the sanctuary. It's this picture that approaching a holy God isn't casual. It's a deliberate journey, a spiritual ascent. And then you get the climax of the whole vision. It is this incredible, powerful moment. Remember how God's glory sadly left through the east gate? Well, now Ezekiel sees that same glory returning, triumphantly through that exact same gate, ready to fill this new temple and live with His people again. It sounds like the perfect ending, right? But here's where the story gets really weird. History is clear. This incredibly detailed, magnificent temple was never built. Not one single stone. Which brings us right back to our mystery, only now it's even deeper. So, what if it wasn't a failed plan? What if the blueprint was never actually meant for stone and mortar in the first place? You see, this wasn't a blueprint. It was a preview, a prophetic trailer for what was to come. And it wasn't pointing to a place, but to a person. And that person, of course, is Jesus. He once said something that just completely baffled everyone around him. "Destroy this temple, and I will raise it again in 3 days." Now, they all thought he was talking about the physical building in Jerusalem. But it was later made crystal clear. The temple he was talking about, it was His own body. Jesus Himself was the true temple, the perfect place where God and humanity could finally meet. Ezekiel's grand, unbuildable blueprint was a prophecy pointing right to Him. But hold on, the story gets even bigger. Because when Jesus was resurrected, it didn't just rebuild the temple of His body. It created something entirely new, something even greater, a living temple made up of everyone who follows Him. And this was a total game changer. I mean, think about the shift. You go from a physical building in one fixed location to a spiritual community all over the world. You go from needing a priest to get close to God to every single person having direct access. It's a complete paradigm shift. What it all boils down to is this. God's home address changed. He moved out of a building and moved into the lives of his people. We are the real, living fulfillment of Ezekiel's ancient blueprint. Okay, so if that's true, if we are now the temple of God, what on earth does that actually mean for us, on a regular Tuesday afternoon?
Well, it's not just some nice slogan, it comes with a huge responsibility. The principles of holiness that applied to that stone temple now apply to us, to our actions, our thoughts, our whole lives. Think of it like this. If you knew a deeply honored guest was coming to stay at your house, you'd clean it up, right? You'd prepare? We're called to do the same for our inner temple, to keep our relationship with Him clear and unobstructed. And this all leads to the final, beautiful conclusion of Ezekiel's entire prophecy. After all the destruction and all the promises of restoration, the new city is given one last ultimate name, Jehovah Shammah.
So what does that mean? It simply means the Lord is there. That's it. At the end of the day, that's the answer to the whole mystery. God's ultimate desire was never a spectacular building. It was simply to be there, to be with the people He loves. And that leaves us with one last question to chew on. If we are this new, living temple, and if our very purpose is to declare to the world that the Lord is there, does the way we live our lives, individually and together, actually make people look at us and think, wow, the Lord is truly here?